Hello, welcome to the Framing Quotes lecture slides. Before proceeding with these slides, make sure that you have read They Say, I Say, The Art of Quoting. Let's begin. The purpose of this slideshow is to introduce to you the importance of integrating your quotes properly. To properly integrate your quotes, you must introduce, translate, and explain. The first half of this presentation will go over why that's necessary, and the second half will provide you an example of how to do it. And at the end, you will be asked to frame your own quote and post it on a discussion post. You're probably wondering, why should I bother with quoting? The importance of quoting is to establish yourself as a credible writer. Quoting shows that you have done your homework on the topic and that you're a credible source on the subject matter. It's also important to choose the right quotation. Make sure to be selective and strategic. By selective, I'm referring to quoting or choosing quotes that are supporting your argument. You're not just choosing any quote that works for the topic, but you're being very specific. Also, that you're being strategic with your quoting. If you choose a quote that's really working for your essay at that point, but then later you decide to revise your essay and that quote is no longer working for you, you must change the quote. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, I can quote anything that relates to my topic, right? No. You should quote sparingly and purposefully. It's important to provide maybe one or two really useful quotes to support a body paragraph than to provide 6 or 7 that aren't really doing much. And sometimes we think the more quotes I use, the better I'm going to back up with what I'm saying. Not necessarily. It's better to quote sparingly and to supplement each quote. And to supplement each quote, you will introduce, translate, and explain each quote. Every single quote? Yep, you got it. Every single quote needs to be framed. Seriously, though. Every quote? What if the quote speaks for itself? A quote never speaks for itself. As a writer, you're taking someone else's words and embedding them into your essay. You have to give your readers some context, and you provide that context by framing your quotes. So make sure that you're always framing every quote. Some quotes might need more explanations than others, and use that and apply that explanation using your better judgment. Alright, so let's begin practicing. There are 3 basic ways of introducing a quote. There are a few others, but let's focus on these 3. Here I've provided some templates and examples of how those templates are being used. In the first example, you see the author, a signal verb, a relative verb, and the quote. Mancios claims that Americans do not have equal opportunity to succeed. If you choose to frame your quote in this way, remember that there's no comma or punctuation necessary here within that sentence. It's just the author, the signal verb, that, and the quote. The second way is actually using a comma. It's the same structure, but rather than using the word that, you're replacing that with a comma. Mancio argues, comma, the price to maximize corporate profit has led to job destruction. The third way allows you to apply a colon. When you apply the colon, and we'll talk about colon rules a little later, but when you apply the colon, you're showing that some of the ideas are interrelated. Maybe it's a cause and effect, or something of the sort. Here, what the writer did is the writer introduces the quote by stating what that quote is somewhat already going to be saying. Mancios concludes his article with a final claim. The class structure in the United States is a function of its economic system. The phrase concludes his article with a final claim. It's letting the readers, me and you, know that this is the last claim, the last argument that Mancios made. So these are 3 ways of introducing quotes. Let's move on. Translating. What does it really mean to translate? You should have an idea of what this is after reading The Art of Quoting and They Say, I Say. Translating just explains what the author is attempting to convey. And this is important because, again, you're taking someone else's words out of context or out of a larger piece, and you have to provide additional context for your readers. Remember to provide credible context, or I should say ethical context. Don't purposely misconstrue or reword what the writers or authors are saying. That's not your job. Your job is to provide accurate information and then later analyze it or argue against it to support your claims. Here we can see how the last quote that we looked at in how to introduce quotes, number 3 here, how that's been translated. Mancios concludes his article with a final claim. The class structure in the United States is a function of its economic system. Mancios is insisting that the American economy operates on the country's class system. So here, the underlined portion is obviously the part that's been translated. The writer is providing his or her readers context on what Mancios is saying in that quote. After you translate the writer's quote, you want to explain how this relates, or maybe keep explaining how this quote is supporting your purpose. So here are some other templates. They Say, I Say, The Art of Quoting provided various templates. Here's a few of them, but these should already be familiar from the text that you have already read. Let's check this framed quote out. So here we are going to examine this quote. One thing to note is that it's really hard to analyze if we framed a quote properly if we don't know what that quote is trying to support. So I've provided a potential essay topic. This is a framed quote taken from one of my student essays from an English 3 class. The topic of his essay was how American corporations impede the American dream. Let's analyze this quote. We've already looked at how the writer introduces the quote using the colon. We've already seen how the writer translates the quote. And the last portion, starting with this, is the part where the writer is explaining the quote. Let's read it all together. Mancios concludes his article with a final claim. The class structure in the United States is a function of its economic system. Mancios insists that the American economy is maintained by the country's class system. This claim suggests that corporations profit from the poor and will hinder lower classes to continue profiting from them. Evidently, those in charge, I think he meant those in charge of these corporations prohibit lower class citizens from actualizing the American dream, such as financial wealth. What do you think? Other than the small typo, do you think this writer is accurately framing a quote? The writer clearly introduces the quote, translates it, and provides an explanation. Overall, the writer here did well in framing the quote, and this is a good model that you would like to use. That you might like to use, I should say. Now it's your turn. You will be framing the following quote. I've provided the author, the page number, and the quote here for you to use. There's a couple things you should consider. You might not want to quote the entire passage that I've provided you here. You might just want to quote a specific area of this passage. In this brief activity, you're going to frame the following quote and post this framed quote in the Frame That Quote discussion post. You will find more details and requirements as to what to do or how to complete this activity in the Frame That discussion post. Let's look at the quote together before we move on. School performance, such as grade and test scores, and education attainment, meaning levels of schooling completed, also correlate strongly with economic class. Furthermore, despite some efforts to make testing fairer and schooling more accessible, current data suggests that the level of inequity is staying the same or getting worse. So again, you will be framing the quote. For more details on this assignment, visit Frame That Quote discussion post on Canvas. This is the end of our presentation. I'll see you on the other side.